Number 10. Uncle Marvel. For those who are new to the DC Captain Marvel world and whose introduction to the character may have been with the first film Shazam, you might not know about the extended members of the Shazam or Marvel family. But don't worry, we're here to make sure no one ever forgets. Uncle Marvel, you'd assume, was Billy Batson's uncle. But no, he actually claimed to be Mary Batson's uncle after discovering her superhero identity as Mary Marvel, but he really wasn't her uncle at all. Dudley H. Dudley was a civilian name, and he was originally the janitor at their school. Still, despite the fact that the Marvel team knew that Dudley was a fraud, or a dud if you will, who made up the story of being Mary's uncle simply so he could join them, they decided he was mostly harmless and enjoyed his company enough to accept him as Uncle Marvel, a portly older man with no powers who attributed his frequent power loss to his ever-flaring Shazambago. Ouch, my Shazambago.
Number 9. Sparky. Once a sidekick to one of DC's most underrated heroes, the original Blue Beetle, comes Sparkington J. Northrup, an American orphan who was adopted by Lord Wellington Northrup of Suppleshire, England. All was well and good with his life up until World War II, when Sparky was sent back to the US by his dad for safety, where he ended up becoming the sidekick of the hero Blue Beetle instead. Although he doesn't look like much, Sparky is actually a pretty decent fighter and was a huge asset during his time as Blue Beetle's sidekick. Described by Blue Beetle himself as a fighting, leaping little athlete on whom he can depend on for assistance at all times, it was really strange that he just kinda up and vanished from the series in 1942. However, he did show up again a year later to help the Beetle on the Western Front. Once the war was finally over though, Sparky was able to return to his home in England and retire from the hero business forever.
Number 8. Alpha. This Spider-Man sidekick happened to go to the same school as Peter Parker and had a similar accident which granted him superpowers. However, he was known for being an underachiever with a C-grade average, and it was his laziness and lack of responsibility when it came to wielding his powers that prompted Spider-Man to remove Alpha's powers. Alpha originally became Spider-Man's sidekick after Spider-Man helped free him and his parents from Jackal, who had kinda hoped to take Alpha's powers for himself. It was after this encounter that Spider-Man both made him a sidekick and then kinda realized how irresponsible he was and decided to drain his powers using the villain Terminus's power siphoning staff. Slowly, Spider-Man would restore Alpha's powers over time. Alpha's civilian name is Andrew Maguire, no relation to Tobey Maguire, but his name does seem to be in honor of both Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire, who had both played Spider-Man on the big screen previous to when his character was created.
Number 7. Nyx. Leaving Marvel and DC for a bit of a change, we're going to be taking a look at Image Comics' Carrie Andrews, the on-again, off-again sidekick and love interest of the anti-hero Spawn. Becoming a spellcaster by the age of 4, Carrie was originally just a witch who was interested in Spawn, who named herself Nyx after the powerful Greek goddess. With a vast array of magical abilities including retrocognition, sound manipulation, and a psychic link, Carrie has been a huge help to Al Simmons' Spawn whenever she is by his side. She even at times donned the Spawn costume herself, which gave her all the powers of the Hellspawn alongside her magical abilities. During her time as Al Simmons' sidekick, she journeyed through the pits of hell, was possessed by a demon, and was even depowered by mystical forces. But in the end, she did get them back and decided to leave Spawn altogether, succumbing to the guilt she felt from the time that she betrayed the man she loved. Man, if that ain't true love, I don't know what it is.
Number 6. Bob. Bob used to work as a Hydra agent and was basically forced into becoming Deadpool's sidekick when Deadpool infiltrated a Hydra base and ran into the poor goon. He has popped up here and thereafter in the Deadpool comics, often appearing as Deadpool's reluctant or sometimes over-enthused sidekick, often hoping that Deadpool will treat him better this time around, only to be disappointed. At one point, Deadpool bought himself a pirate ship and had Bob join him once more as his sidekick, which meant not that Bob got to dress up as a badass pirate, but instead was forced to wear a parrot costume and finish every sentence with a squawk. During his time serving Deadpool on the ship, he almost died of dehydration due to how stuffy and how hot it was inside that costume under the blazing Caribbean sun. Poor Bob.
Number 5. Doiby Dickles. Now if you're not familiar with the first Green Lantern Alan Scott, then you probably don't know who Charles Doiby Dickles is. But hey, that's okay, that's what I'm here for. Back in the golden age of comics, Alan Scott had Doiby join him on his adventures for pretty close to 8 years after Doiby saved him from a group of gangsters. Although he didn't possess any powers, Doiby is surprisingly badass, as not only was he a skilled fighter, he was an excellent driver and pilot. In his beloved taxi that he named Goitrude, he has driven Green Lantern around at lightning fast speeds, which honestly seems a little bit silly considering that Alan Scott could fly, but I don't know, maybe he got tired sometimes. Dickles has made several cameo appearances since his original run ended, mostly as a comedic relief character in the early 2000s. His most famous modern appearance was when he joined a group of other forgotten Golden Age sidekicks in order to form the hilariously inept group Old Justice. Now I personally would love to see more of him in the future, so DC, get on that.
Number 4. Terra. But not that Terra. This Terra is also known as Atli and is from an underground world known as Strode. Her and her people take it upon themselves to protect the Earth and its ecosystem. Atli herself was granted geokinetic powers, which she uses to do this. Atli's powers are a genetic duplicate of the original Terra, who is often known for her ties to the Teen Titans, Tara Markov. Atli herself has teamed up with both Supergirl and Power Girl and has even allied herself with Harley Quinn, thinking she was doing good by helping Harley to steal from the Joker's vault. Which she sort of was.
Number 3. Zook. Now I don't know about you guys, but I find it really hard to believe that the stoic and pretty much emotionless Martian Manhunter had this little guy as a sidekick. Hailing from an alternate dimension, Zook is a member of the alien race known as, well, Zooks, and came to Earth alongside a few other evil aliens after a portal was opened. Zook met up with Martian Manhunter while he was trying to apprehend the two evil aliens and instantly took a liking to the hero. And I think the feeling was a bit mutual because when Zook was left stranded on Earth when the dimensional rift back to his home was closed prematurely, John Jones took him under his wing. Zook has a number of abilities thanks to his alien physiology. He can change his body temperature to be extremely hot or extremely cold, he can see through disguises no matter how complex, and can flatten or expand his body as a defense mechanism or to make him fit into tight spaces. Sadly though, he disappeared from the DC continuity after the events of Infinite Crisis.
Number 2. Spider-Bite. Spider-Bite is Spider-Man's biggest fan and pint-sized sidekick, who has only appeared in one comic, Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man issue number 6 from 2019. He helped Spider-Man take on the Sinister 60, though this is later revealed to be a make-pretend adventure for Spider-Bite's benefit. In reality, Spider-Bite is Nathan, a young boy who is fighting cancer and whose one wish was to become Spider-Man's sidekick, which is why Spidey came to join him for this adventure-filled day. At the end of Spidey's visit, Nathan doesn't want Spidey to leave, as he's afraid if he goes to sleep, he may never wake up. Spider-Man agrees to extend his visit and takes Nathan out with him for a bit to swing around New York. Aww.
Number 1. Zack. Just Zack. Created solely for the 1980s Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon comes Zack, a little boy who appeared for the first time in Season 3 Episode 26 entitled The Fifth Turtle. As the biggest self-proclaimed TMNT fan, Zack was so crazy about the Turtles that he took up arms with a hockey stick, tossed on a green bandana, and attempted to help them in their fight against crime. Now obviously the Turtles wanted absolutely nothing to do with the young crime fighter, at first because, well, they didn't want him to get hurt, but when Zack was able to secretly follow them back to their lairs, they decided that he had what it took to be a part of the team, making him the fifth turtle. Although he's just a pretty average kid, Zack had a knack for solving mysteries and tracking down the bad guys, and across 4 seasons, he helped the Turtles go up against villains like the Rat King, Shredder, and even more. Although, he wasn't the best under interrogation though, since he was the only one not able to withstand the tickling interrogation, which, you know, I kinda understand because I'm pretty ticklish too.
Number 10. Prodigy. I feel like a lot of people maybe forgot about Prodigy, as he's been MIA for some time in the comics and was depowered during the events of M-Day. But with the magic of Krakoa and Dawn of X, he was able to return to us, being resurrected and also regaining his powers. 1. Prodigy happens to be a super genius, but this is also because he's a telepath with the ability to basically mimic anyone's skill set and share their knowledge while nearby. This has also been shown in the past to extend to fighting precognition, where he can basically use his abilities to read a person and predict their next move of attack in a battle, which is pretty sweet. He often also builds his own advanced tech, and even when depowered is known to possess a great level of intellect, making him a challenging adversary whether or not he has his mutant abilities. Even as a depowered mutant, you might not want to mess with him. Number 9. Lady Mastermind. Lady Mastermind, aka Reagan Wingard, recently popped back up in the giant-sized Nightcrawler comics and was welcomed into the mutant nation of Krakoa. Some, however, may not know or appreciate her mutant history and background. Just who is Lady Mastermind? Well, she's the daughter of Jason Wingard, aka the original villain known as Mastermind. Her powers take after her father's, allowing her to create realistic illusions projected into her target's minds. While she also has an even lesser known suspected half-sister, Reagan's powers are often depicted as being the more powerful between the two, with it even being said that her abilities are even more stronger than her father's. Additionally, she is also fairly skilled in hand-to-hand combat, a skill set her father actually very much lacked. He was hilarious in a fight. He's like a rag doll. Sorry Mastermind. Number 8. Gentle. Gentle is a mutant with the abilities of super strength. I know, very hilarious considering his name. He can grant himself immediate muscle mass that basically allows him to change size and increase his strength when needed. It is yet unknown just how strong Gentle can make himself, and he is also known for being someone who could potentially even take on the Hulk, although he is more of a pacifist, hence his name. Gentle's real name is Nesno Abidemi. I hope I'm saying that right. Nesno Abidemi. I'm sorry if I'm saying it wrong. It's a hard one to say. He was raised in Wakanda, but always felt like an outsider because his father was Russian. When his mutant abilities surfaced, it was actually Aurora Monroe Storm, who was queen at the time in Wakanda, who encouraged him to be sent to the Xavier Institute so he could learn how to better control his powers. His vibranium tattoos are also meant to help him to control those powers. Also, vibranium tattoos are super cool, but I think they're also super painful to get, so maybe don't get them. You can't, because it's not a real substance, but still. Number 7. Egg. Fabio Medina might not seem like a powerful mutant based on his ability, but since his rise to the supremely important mutant group known as the Five on Krakoa, he can be considered one of the most important and powerful mutants around. When he combines his powers with that of the Five, he has control over life and death. Originally, the bouncy gold balls that he shot forth from his chest were believed to be nothing special, but it was later revealed that these balls were actually infertile eggs, which could be used in the process of resurrecting new mutants. Number 6. Tempest. Eva Bell is another member of the Five. She has actually appeared in less issues than Egg, if you can believe it, despite the fact that she has a pretty neat power set, and it's been neat since the beginning, which allows her to time travel. Tempest, as she used to be known, was able to control the passage of time in a specific pocket of space. She could also slow time in a current space that she also inhabited, either slowing time around her or creating time bubbles to manipulate time in that bubble, where she could speed it up or slow it down. The only challenge for her has been losing control of her powers, which can cause them to behave unpredictably. Still, controlling time is a pretty impressive and powerful ability to have. Number 5. Empath. Manuel de la Rocha made his first appearance in the original New Mutant series, where he was part of Emma Frost's team known as the Hellions. He's recently reappeared in the newest Hellion series from 2020 and proves just how powerful, but also how sadistic he can be. Empath's power is, you guessed it, empathy, and he can use this power to not only sense others' emotions, but also to control them, in effect manipulating others into doing whatever he wishes them to do. His influence can be subtle, such that someone might not even realize they're being manipulated by him, or it can be more forceful, turning his victims into complete husks of their former selves and bending them fully to his will. Number 4. Vulcan. Vulcan is one of the most powerful mutants around, being an Omega level mutant, skilled in energy manipulation and absorption. Yet he is somehow the lesser known of all the Summers despite his insane power levels. He has also demonstrated the ability to absorb his opponent's powers as well and use them for himself on the rare occasion. Vulcan is the youngest Summers brother, also known as Gabe Summers, and we only learned of his existence in 2006 when he first appeared in the comic X-Men Deadly Genesis issue number 1. And yet he is considered the most powerful of these three. Number 3. Orphan Maker and Nanny. Orphan Maker still remains a relatively mysterious character, though is also one who still proves to be a force to be reckoned with in combat. Orphan Maker is also known as Peter and was part of a plot of Mr. Sinister's originally. However, when Mr. Sinister decided that Peter could not be controlled, he decided to eliminate him. Nanny, an insane cyborg, however, saved him, believing it was her responsibility to look after orphan mutant children and protect them. Although I will say she's got a weird way of going about it. While insane, Nanny was also once a scientist and remains quite intelligent. She actually outfitted Orphan Maker with weapons and a powerful suit to help her in her task. While it's still unclear as to what Orphan Maker's true mutant powers are, and while he seems to still have the mind of a child, probably due to Nanny's manipulation, his suit and weapons make him a formidable foe in combat, and he often uses pixie dust in battle to help Nanny influence and control the minds of their opponents, as she herself is a telepath, but a weak one, so she needs a little bit of help. Needs a little bit of pixie dust. Even during a fight with Cyclops, Scott's optic blasts were unable to harm Orphan Maker while he was in his armor, with Scott's blast simply reflecting off the armor, causing more harm than help really. Number 2. Trinary. Considering the modern age we live in, Trinary is a pretty powerful mutant. Her abilities allow her to control all tech that is within her line of sight. She has used these powers to move massive sums of money digitally and to manipulate and control Sentinel tech. Currently on Krakoa, Trinary is one of the few technopathic mutants trusted with the important project known as Sleeping Giant, wherein mutants monitor for upcoming advancement in sentinel technology, such as Nimrods or the creation of a mother mold, so that they can ideally put a stop to its development. Project Sleeping Giant were instrumental in helping the X-Men to destroy a mother mold that Orchis was creating before it went online. Number 1. Bailey Hoskins. Now you might think I'm joking here if you happen to know the obscure Bailey Hoskins, but I'm really not. Bailey appeared in his own miniseries titled X-Men, Worst X-Man Ever. He was known for being the worst X-Man ever because his ability only allowed him to do one thing, explode. But he didn't have any regeneration powers, so he basically was a mutant who could never use his powers, otherwise he'd kill himself. It's kind of a one-hit wonder. So how is that powerful? Well, it's also implied in the series that when he does choose to sacrifice himself and blow up the villain of the story, that he makes it possible for Earth 616 to come into existence. So without him, we wouldn't have the main Marvel continuity that we know and love today, potentially. If saving the entire continuity from becoming a dystopian future isn't powerful, then I don't know what is.
Coming in at number 10, Simon Baz. First appearing in the New 52 FCDB Special Edition number 1, he's a Lebanese American born in Dearborn, Michigan. After seeing the attacks of the World Trade Center on the news when he was only 10 years old, he and his family faced ostracism because they were Muslim. His sister even got bullied and attacked physically, so Simon would have to intervene. And as years went on, he got an engineering degree, and shortly after that, a job at an automotive plant. After the financial crisis, he was let go and had to resort to stealing cars and reselling the parts just to make ends meet. He was also a great street racer and even made some dough that way. Accidentally stealing a truck filled with explosives, Simon ends up getting arrested and they suspected him as a terrorist, sending him over to Guantanamo Bay. Ignoring his pleas of innocence, Simon was nearly tortured. It was then a Green Lantern ring popped into the room to save the day, removing him from the facility. So what makes Simon stand out? I mean, besides his strong origin story, he has emerald sight. Yeah, that's right, Simon Baz can see glimpses of the future. He also used to carry a gun with him even while wielding the Green Lantern ring. Why? Well, because he didn't trust a whole lot of people, and he wanted to back up in case the ring failed him, which it did a couple of times. The ring itself, it's actually 2 rings forged into one. Come again? So when Hal Jordan and Sinestro were imprisoned in the Black Hand's Black Lantern ring, the 2 rings actually fused together, and the ring chose Frank Leminski first. Frank had purposely gotten a job at Arkham Asylum because he knew the ring picked its host based on willpower and overcoming fear. And it worked out for a bit because it ultimately decided that it made a mistake and found none other than, you heard it, Simon Baz. Number 9, Guy Gardner. Making his first appearance in Green Lantern Volume 2, number 59, Guy Gardner was chosen to be the backup for Hal Jordan. The ring says you gotta have courage and willpower, but is it possible to maintain those characteristics whilst being a bad guy? A bad guy? Got him. Turns out it is very possible. While the events of the Blackest Night unfolded, Green Lanterns were exposed to other rings, and with his temper issues, he was bestowed the Red Lantern ring. He actually had both at one point. Christmas colors, fun, how beautiful. I mean, this guy may be a bit of a meanie, but ultimately with his willpower, he's proven that he can still be a hero after all. Nice. See, this is a character arc I would love to see in theaters. We need more Green Lantern movies like this. I mean, even in his early life, Guy was abused by his father Ronald. And I feel like these character arcs and backstories are important to see, especially when anger and willpower are balanced in his life story. These origins are relatable. Make it happen. Number 8, Chip. This one is too fun not to include. Making his first appearance in Green Lantern Volume 2, issue 149, Chip is, well, look it up, obviously. So basically, the Crapster army invaded Sector 1014, and once they killed that Green Lantern, Dr. Abex took his army and went to his homeworld, Hyven. This little man Chip was sentenced to death to set an example. Don't do it, look at him, please. He was the leader of the Hyvenite resistance, so it made sense to do it, I guess. Chip was then visited by one of the Guardians of the Universe, gave him a Green Lantern ring, and Bob's your uncle. So one thing I love about this dude is that he's a chipmunk, squirrel looking thing. He's so cute, and as you may have noticed, but that doesn't stop him from killing it. Yeah, he just rocked Hal Jordan. I'm a fan of Chip. He even took on the Man of Steel himself in an Injustice Gods Among Us storyline. He attacked Superman by going after his mind. I feel like if you have a movie with this guy, it'll feel similar to how Rocket was portrayed in Guardians of the Galaxy. At first people are like, he's a little fluffy cute thing, and then bam, you get punched in the head like 10 times. Number 7. Salak. Who's next on our list? None other than Chip's best friend. Salak is this cool looking four-armed alien Green Lantern from Sligia, one of them's right, who is a protector for the Book of Oa. He's quite tall, has pink skin and a beak-like mouth. Making his first debut in Green Lantern Volume 2, issue 149, Salak is actually second in command right behind the Guardians of the Universe. Nice. He's a veteran with his power ring, so he doesn't really rely on it until he absolutely needs it. He's a pessimist and he's kind of a loner. I mean, aren't we all at some point? Come on. His importance doesn't go unnoticed. Being the protocol officer of the Corps, he plans missions and answers to none other than the Guardians of the Universe. It's kind of cool having your boss the Guardians of the Universe. Nice. And as I said earlier, his best friend is Chip. So once Salak was too late stopping the execution of Sinestro, so the Oa battery ended up being destroyed, making his ring inoperable. So he headed to Hyven to reunite with Chip, whose ring was one of the few that still worked. Clutch! So Salak acted as an advisor to him. What a power duo. I'd love to play Salak in a movie. I feel like I have the lankiness. I don't know. What do you think? He's taller than me. I mean, he's like 7 feet. I'm not too far off. Maybe. We'll see. Number 6, Chaselon.
Your species have any problem with that?
No, my arms are non-organic. I do, however, get silica mites.
Fascinating.
Perhaps we could consume refreshment together and speak of our adventures.
That's a cool looking thing. Making his first appearance in the Green Lantern Volume 2, number 9, Chaselon is a being that can use 13 senses rather than our normal 5. The Green Lantern of Sector 1416 has a different appearance than usual, as you may have seen. I mean, look at him. So what exactly is this dude's deal? Well, he's from Barrio 3, which is a world where crystal life forms have dominated. So he's a sentient crystalline sphere, and like I said, can use 13 senses. Unreal. This dude's powers are super underrated, okay? He was given a power ring by the Guardians of the Universe due to his extensive willpower. He's also a member of the Alpha Lantern Corps and the Dark Stars, an intergalactic police force. Number 5, Hanu. Making its first appearance in Green Lantern Volume 3, issue 49, and also appearing in the 2011 Green Lantern film, Ayo, Hanu is a beast of brute force. He's originally from the planet Ovicron 6. The warriors there think that using a weapon is overrated, it's frowned upon. They say a weapon makes you weak. Okay, super badass. So he relies on his own strength rather than the ring. That's cool. Yeah, I have a ring, but you know, I'd rather just punch you in the head. It's easier. This sure did come in handy when he was freed from a prison from Hal Jordan and Guy Gardner. He tore the place up without even using the ring. And when he does use it, it's insane, okay? So during the Sinestro Corps War, he finally used the ring to punch through Horku. And Horku's the same species as Hanu, so that doesn't shine light on how strong this dude is. I don't know what will. Number 4, Alan Scott. The Golden Age Green Lantern, making his debut in 1940 back in the All-American Comics number 16. He's the first ever Green Lantern, so of course I'm gonna include him in this list. He actually forged a Green Lantern from a meteor. This dude was around even before the Green Lantern Corps, so he's not too popular with the current run of things. So he gets his power in a much different way than all of the other Green Lanterns. He actually uses a ring that's magic based instead of being linked to the central battery on Oa. I feel like we need to see this origin story on this big screen ASAP. It's too cool to ignore. Number 3, Sodom Yat. Making his first appearance in Tales of the Green Lantern Corps Annual number 2 back in 1986, Sodom Yat is a guy from the Daxamite race who are cousins of the Kryptonians. Pretty sweet. Daxamites have similar powers to Kryptonians, but instead of being vulnerable to kryptonite, they're vulnerable to lead. Just basic lead. So if you're gonna take some notes around Sodom, make sure you hide it or else you might kill him. So this guy's loaded. He's basically a god, but no lead. Kind of like no capes, no lead. He doesn't even really need a ring. He's already so strong from the ion entity has given him an unbelievable strengths. He always dreamed of being a space explorer, so once he noticed an alien spaceship crash near Earth, he found Tessog, and after his parents caught wind of the new friend, his parents killed Tessog and brainwashed Sodom to forget the whole thing. After seeing Tessog in a museum, dead, he was reminded of the actions that had taken place, so he reconstructed Tessog's ship and then was bestowed the Green Lantern ring. Nice, you did it, full circle. And he became the ultimate Green Lantern and the last member of the Corps. The prophecy came from none other than, drumroll, number 2, Abin Sur. We all remember arguably the best part of the Green Lantern movie, the beginning. We find Abin Sur after he crash landed on Earth before giving the ring to Hal Jordan. The purple alien is portrayed by none other than Jango Fett himself, Tamara Morrison. But who is this character and why is he so important? Making his debut in Showcase number 22, Abin Sur was a Green Lantern from Sector 2814 and was the Green Lantern right before Hal Jordan as you saw in the movie. So before that, he actually visited Earth a handful of times. He teamed up with an ancestor of Hal Jordan in the American Old West to fight an alien named Traitor. Solid name, very fitting. So why is he flying a spaceship if he has the ring? Well, he was told by the prophecy that his ring would eventually fail him. So he loaded his spaceship up with weapons for when the frightful day comes. And after being attacked by Sinestro and crash landing on Earth, he chose Hal Jordan to bear the ring, as he was closer to his location than Guy Gardner. So close. Hal ended up using the ring to hide the body and his ship underneath a mountain. It's pretty cool. And finally, number 1, Nort. Making his first debut back in 1988 in Justice League International, this cool looking member of the Green Lantern Corps and later on Justice League Antarctica might be my personal favorite. He's a funny little quirky dude. He reminds me of, I don't know, me maybe? Who knows? He's this quirky underdog, literally. Look at him, he's a dog. He instantly reminded me of Peppy Hare from Star Fox, just like this wise looking dude. He's actually disliked by other heroes and is often looked upon as the loser despite how incompetent he may be. Okay, maybe I don't relate to this guy as much as I thought. Or do I? He can't even read a map. So I mean, come on dude, you gotta figure it out. He tries his best though, he's brave and he's super honorable. I feel like a character such as himself would be great to see in live action. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people who would relate. He kinda reminds me of Dustin from Stranger Things, the way he wants to help, and he has his moments where he genuinely kicks some ass. Nort's uncle, Newt, pushed him through the Green Lantern training, so he's more than capable when the opportunity arises to do so. Number 10, Bob. Hands down the best name for a superhero sidekick, period. We have Bob. Making his first appearance in Cable and Deadpool issue 38, Bob is a former member of the terrorist agency known as Hydra. Hail Hydra. But most importantly, hail Bob. So how did Bob get into Hydra in the first place? What are you doing, Bob? Well, his wife Allison was giving him a hard time for not being able to get a steady job. So he figured he would work for Hydra. Classic. He wasn't a big fan of the organization though, only because they didn't have dental coverage. I mean, fair. Not a bad point, Bob. Valid point. Funny enough, Bob made a brief cameo in the 2016 Deadpool movie, where in the final battle of the film, he caught up with him, talking about Bob's wife Gail and her amazing tuna casserole, right before a quick headbutt knockout. But don't worry, Wade dragged Bob off screen to safety, or so we assume.
Number 9, Elsa Bloodstone. I can already hear the fans of Elsa Bloodstone raging in an uproar of that they know Elsa and how dare I put her on this list. And while yes, Elsa Bloodstone does have some very passionate fans, I will add that there are actually a lot of Marvel fans out there who are unfamiliar with her. Trust me, I know some pretty intense fellow comic nerds who have never heard of her until running into her in Marvel Strike Force. I'm looking at you, Dylan. So I thought it might be nice to talk a little bit more about this character who is super awesome, but tends to be less celebrated and not as well known to most. Elsa was born into a legacy of monster hunters. Her father Ulysses was a monster hunter before her, and so it was her destiny to defeat monsters while working alongside the good ones. Let's not forget that the Marvelverse also has a whole other horror and monster aspect to it as well. After all, Blade is also a part of Marvel. Have we ever gotten a Blade and Elsa team up, by the way? That is something I'd love to see. Should have already happened at this point.
Number 8, Jasper Sitwell. He made his comic book debut in 1966 in Strange Tales issue 144 and his cinematic debut in Thor 1. We all remember that agent Natasha Romanoff kicked off the building in Captain America Winter Soldier. That was the big reveal moment for the Falcon. But who was the agent that they were threatening? Well, Jasper Sitwell posed as a high-ranking S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. In reality, he was actually working for Hydra. This dude wasn't close too, like him and Coulson were the ones that got the call about Thor's hammer first landing on Earth. And he was one of the secret masterminds behind Project Insight. Could have been worse though. In the comics, Sitwell is actually Nick Fury's assistant, and at one point temporarily becomes the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. Sitwell is played by Maximiliano Hernandez in the MCU, so if you want to see him on the big screen, you've got a little bit of catching up to do.
Number 7, Lindsay Mccabe. Lindsay is the best friend of Jessica Drew. You maybe never knew that she had? Me personally, I thought Jessica's best friend might be Carol Danvers, and maybe now that might be more true, but throughout the later 70s to the mid 90s in the comics, Lindsay Mccabe was it. She and Jessica met while living in New York at a group therapy clinic. Jessica liked Lindsay because she was a tough, strong woman who wasn't afraid of Jessica or intimidated by Jessica's strange powers. Eventually, the two moved to San Francisco together when Lindsay got the opportunity to study theater there. Lindsay herself was an actress. Lindsay would eventually learn Jessica was Spider-Woman and would also spend some time working with Jess when she had her private investigation agency. She would also try to help Wolverine in the disguise of Patch, whom she also knew previously, though did not actually recognize. She didn't know it was Wolverine, thought it was Patch, to save her friend Jessica when she was possessed by the Black Blade, aka the Muramasa Blade.
Number 6, Space Knights. Okay, these guys are awesome, and I hope we get a Space Knights show soon, or in my lifetime at least. They're fairly new to the game, having first appeared in Guardians of Infinity issue 2, only back in 2016. So a long time ago in the Outer Rim, a substance known as core was discovered. This substance gave a little bit of flair to the Perrin's warriors' weapons. So led by Horn, the warriors saved the planet from slavery. One thing to note about core that's rather important is that if it's sitting too long, it would corrupt the soldiers. So they always have to get a move on. Kind of like if I'm near chocolate milk at any point in my life. It's just eventually gonna corrupt me, and then I'm gonna have to chug all of it because I have no self-control as a human being. Get it away from me. Go, gone. So as time went on, more and more joined in on the warriors' efforts, and the group came to be known as, you guessed it, the Space Knights.
Number 5. Peepers. Peepers is one of those much lesser known mutants who has been around for quite a long time, but due to his unimpressive power set, pops up a lot less in comparison to others. Similar to Eye-Boy, Peepers' powers all kind of have to do pretty much with his sight or his eyes. A physical mutation made his eyes larger than most, so much so that they kind of protrude outward to an extent. He has enhanced eyesight, X-ray vision, and was sometimes even known to be able to fire optic blasts out of his eyes, similar to Cyclops, but not really on the same level as the X-Men team leader. Peepers' legal name is Peter Quinn, and while I haven't seen him pop up yet in the Dawn of X line, and hey, I've been watching for that, he has made a recent appearance in Marvel's Ravencroft series, where he appears to be working as an orderly or a medical assistant at Ravencroft. Pretty random.
Number 4. Ella Whitby. Making her comic book debut back in Deadpool Volume 2, Issue 40, Ella Whitby was the doctor who helped Deadpool escape Crossmore Institution in England. But it wasn't long before she confessed her love for the Merc of the Mouth. Wade, however, didn't share the same feelings. Ella started to become a bit of a stalker, I guess you could say. She confessed her love to him again, only this time not so fashionable, with a homemade Deadpool suit attached to her body. So Deadpool starts to get curious and goes to her house. Turns out she's collected body parts of Deadpool. So Deadpool realizes that she's probably going for the Warden next to make Deadpool happy and all. So he goes to Warden's house, and just as he had expected, she was waiting there to kill the Warden in just the way Deadpool would do it himself. That is, by boiling tea made with ammonium nitrate on the stove with a plastic bag in the oven filling with gas. So after the explosion, Wade went back to her apartment, met up with a very burned Ella, and told her that he loves somebody else. Hashtag Wade the Heartbreaker.
Number 3. Amazing Baby. You might not know Amazing Baby just yet because, well, they're a super new character, but they also exist as a throwback to an older X-Men enemy, the Warwolves. Warwolves were an enemy of the X-Men that were almost shapeshifters. Almost. Their ability allowed them to drain their enemies of their life energy and then basically wear their skins like a suit, disguising themselves as that person. These Warwolves originally hailed from Mojo World and were sentient wolf-like metallic-looking creatures. Amazing Baby is a Warwolf pup that the Excalibur team in the Dawn of X line rescued from Cullen Bloodstone. Yes, relation to Elsa, who we talked about earlier. Cullen's her brother. The rescue pup was then given to Rachel Summers, who agreed to look after the little one despite how dangerous the mutants know this pup could grow up to be. She named her pet werewolf Amazing Baby, and you can also see him pop up in the Dawn of X's X Factor series alongside Rachel.
And number 2, Macho Gomez. Making his debut in Deadpool Volume 2, Issue 32, Macho Gomez is said to be the baddest, most feared operator in the galaxy, and his name sure does sound like it. He's a skilled fighter when it comes to shooting. He's got 6 fingers on each hand instead of 5, so he has that extra accuracy, you know? He's got that one little flip-flop over for stability. He's kind of like a Mandalorian bounty hunter in a way. He has the cockiness and the attitude to follow suit as well. When he was hired to assassinate the family of Reginald Harris, he was actually tricked into thinking Deadpool had already done the job before him. So naturally, he was kind of pissed and wanted to get back at him. Now, fighting Deadpool is usually a pretty tough task. So Macho Gomez lost the battle more than once. And after losing a battle to Deadpool, Macho was pushed into an escape pod and sent into the depths of space. Meanwhile, Wade took his place and replaced him at Funzel, even marrying Orxa. That's Deadpool for you, I don't know.
Number 1. Kandra. I love how when Kandra first appeared in the comics, she already came with a ton of backstory and power. The funny part was that although she threw her weight around as this supervillain of sorts in Gambit issue number 1, and was this immortal who had ties to tons of other characters, this was our first time meeting her. What an introduction. During her initial appearance, Kandra was revealed to be the Benefactress, a character who had pitted the Thieves Guild and Assassins Guild of New Orleans against one another for centuries for her own purposes. She is also heavily implied to be a former lover of Gambit's and we'd come to know her as a member of the often now forgotten Externals, an immortal, often villainous group of mutants who are insanely powerful, and not to be confused with the Eternals, which is a totally different group. And Externals as well cannot die! Well, for the most part. Remember Selene? She was also a part of the Externals, but Selene simply became much more popular, so we still know who she is. Number 10. Wind. Wind is the name of the main character from the self-titled series, also of course named Wind. It comes from Boom Studios and was written by James Tynion IV with art by Michael Dalianos. Wind is a teenage hero who has always hidden the truth of his elven and magical heritage as a weird blood. His heritage grants him great power he's been hiding from his whole life in an attempt to fit in, being made to believe that magic is dangerous and basically turns people into monsters, or in some other way corrupts them. When he becomes too old to hide his pointed ears and who he is any longer, he is forced to either try and change or embrace who he really is. And in order to protect his friends against those who would hunt both him and them down, Wind ultimately embraces his magical side, unleashing powerful abilities. Wind has wings, can fly, and can communicate with forest-like spirits or sprites. He also has, like many other teen heroes, the power of friendship, which usually means he ends up making friends with powerful allies. I would say if you love the world of Avatar, you might also end up falling in love with both the character Wind and his series. It reminds me of Avatar, at least, in like the best way. Number 9. Lord Fanny. Lord Fanny is Hilda Morales, who was born as a boy but raised as a girl. She is a transsexual woman and one of the first trans heroes in comics. Lord Fanny was raised as a girl by her grandmother because only women in their culture could become witches, and her grandmother was a powerful witch who wanted to pass on her knowledge and power to Fanny. Although Fanny herself did choose to be a girl, if that makes sense. Lord Fanny is a member of the Invisibles team and was created by writer Grant Morrison and artist Steve Yoel. The Invisibles was a comic series that existed as part of DC's Vertigo imprint back when it was around. I miss Vertigo so much. The series began in 1994, and in issue 13 we'd learn more about Lord Fanny's origins and her very tragic backstory. Lord Fanny's such a cool character. And friends, before we move on to the next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to learn about even more cool, lesser known indie heroes, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Quantum and Woody. You may have heard of Valiant's character Bloodshot, who recently got his own solo film, but what about all of their other superheroes? Quantum and Woody is a series and superhero duo from Valiant Comics. It was inspired by the superhero team-up series Power Man and Iron Fist, but is a lot more bizarre. The series itself was written by Christopher Priest, with art actually by the artist who did Power Man and Iron Fist. Pretty cool. Quantum and Woody are adoptive brothers who, after years of being estranged, are brought back together when their father mysteriously dies. While trying to figure out what really happened to him, they stumble upon superpowers. The catch? They must touch their power bands at least once every 24 hours to not only keep their powers, but also keep from losing their lives as well, as they would then no longer exist if they didn't touch their band. Quantum's powers are more defense-based, while Woody's are more offensive. Oh, and they also kind of have an animal sidekick, Vincent Van Gogh, who is even more bizarre than he already sounds. Just trust me. I don't want to spoil anything, but Vincent Van Gogh. What a goat. Number 7. Josephine. More commonly referred to as Jo, Josephine is the main character and hero of the Fatale series, which comes to us from Image Comics. Fatale is a supernatural noir-style comic created by the brilliant team-up of writer Ed Brubaker and artist Sean Phillips. Seriously, I love these two together. Some might argue that Jo isn't really a hero, as she's a little bit selfish, but in focusing on uncovering the mysteries of her own power and in trying to save herself, she does inevitably save others. In the long run, at least. There are a lot of people that end up being sacrificed along the way in order for Jo to stand a chance in defeating her enemies in the end. And also there are just straight up people being sacrificed along the way by her enemies who are attempting to track her down. So yeah, she kinda also gets a lot of people killed, but you know, it's not her fault. Jo's powers allow her to control all men who gaze upon her, with them being irresistibly attracted to her no matter who they are and no matter if she wants to influence them or not. Unless of course they are able to protect themselves against her influence with extremely powerful magic, which we only see from a couple characters really in the series. In other words, her power is pretty freaking strong. The only downside here, which is kind of the crux of it all, is that she can't fully control her powers. That is, she can't turn them off when she wants to, which ends up causing a lot of problems for Jo along the way, but I won't spoil any of that. Anyways, if you haven't read Fatale, it's now, I think, it's gonna be 10 years old soon, so go and read it. Hurry up! Came out I think in 2012. That's when it started. Number 6. King Mob. King Mob is the leader of the Invisibles. He was once a horror writer who wrote under the pen name Kit Morrison. As the series The Invisibles is created by Grant Morrison, Mob is believed to be sort of a fictional stand-in for Morrison himself. King Mob's legal name was Gideon Starozowski, and he struggles with his alter persona, especially troubled by how violent he, as King Mob, can be. King Mob is not only a leader who wields power in that sense, because he's a leader, but also has experience with firearms and weapons, is a skilled martial artist and fighter, is psychic, can time travel, and employs the use of chaos magic. So, lots of cool things that he can do. Also, if you haven't read The Invisibles, it is really trippy. Go read it. If you like The Matrix, you'll probably like The Invisibles. If you like The Matrix and if you like Doom Patrol, which of course is also Grant Morrison. Not The Matrix, Doom Patrol. Number 5. Laura Wilson / Persephone. Laura Wilson is the main character of the Wicked and the Divine series from Image Comics. The series was created by writer Kieran Gillen and artist Jamie McKelvey. In this story, gods come to life cyclically, being kind of reincarnated. This is known as the recurrence. Laura herself is obsessed with the gods and the pantheon, who are all of course re-emerging at the time. She wants nothing more than to be a god herself. At least that is what she thinks she wants, until her wishes kind of come true. She is revealed to be Persephone, who is believed to be the final god to return during the recurrence. As Persephone, she can summon plants and vines and control them. She also seems to have some kind of control or influence over the underworld. Laura can also create fireballs and reveal to others past events, summoning visions of the past even if she was not present for those events. Number 4. Sludge. Sludge is a hero or anti-hero who comes to us initially from Malibu Comics and was created by writer Steve Gerber and artist Aaron Lopresti. Sludge was once Frank Hogue, a dirty NYPD police officer who accepted bribes in exchange for favors when it came to drug dealings. He was ordered by the crime boss he worked for, John Paul Marcello, to kill another likely dirtier cop. When Frank refused Marcello's request, Marcello had him killed instead. After being shot, a grenade went off, knocking him into a bucket of chemical waste. Who put that chemical waste there? The waste would merge with him after he was dumped into the sewers, turning him into the super-heroic monstrosity Sludge. Sludge possesses a healing factor and super strength. He could also kill or mutate his opponents with just a touch. Kinda turns them into sludge. It's pretty dark, really. Number 3. Radiant Yellow. We don't know that much about the newest Radiants, but we do know that they seem interested in protecting innocent people from whatever craziness is currently going on. Okay, hard to keep talking about all of this Radiant Black series without spoiling anything, but once again, I'm gonna try my best. Radiant Yellow appears to be an older gentleman, and as far as I know, we don't really know his name yet. What we do know is that each Radiant seems to have their own power set. At least that's what we're being led to believe by the story and the imagery used. It hasn't exactly all been laid out yet, which is honestly kind of what makes this series so much fun. There's so much we don't know. The mystery of it all. Radiant Yellow, however, seems to have powers based in perhaps light manipulation. To me, that's what it looks like the force blasts that they emit are based in, and it also looks to me like they can perhaps manipulate light to create illusions. That's just based on the imagery that's surrounding them in the comics. Like the other Radiants, Yellow isn't too experienced and doesn't seem to understand the full extent of their powers just yet. Radiant Yellow comes to us from the Radiant Black series, which belongs to Image Comics and is written by Kyle Higgins, who, yes, was also the initial writer of the Power Rangers series, and it was also created by artist Marcelo Costa. Number 2. ExoManoWar. Valiant Comics actually has a whole stable and universe filled with supers, including this one here, ExoManoWar. ExoManoWar is actually the name of the sentient armor that is tied to our hero in this series, Auric of Dacia, a Visigoth from the 5th century AD. Auric would end up being abducted by aliens and enslaved for years before he managed to escape. Auric learned of where his captive's armory was kept and basically ended up getting there and then getting the ExoManoWar suit. He then bonded with the suit and used that advanced tech to escape his captors. However, due to interstellar travel, by the time he arrived back on Earth, it was now the 20th century, basically modern day. Auric would have to adjust to this very different world, and along the way would meet other superheroes from the Valiant universe. That's right, there's not just 2 more, there's a whole bunch of them. ExoManoWar is a character created by writers Jim Shooter, Steve Englehart, and as well as artists Bob Layton and Barry Windsor Smith. Number 1. Black Hammer. Black Hammer is Joe Weber, the title character of the Black Hammer series, written by Jeff Lemire with artwork by the amazing Dean Ormston. The Black Hammer series was made to be completely different from other more traditional superhero comics, but if I did have to compare Black Hammer to anyone from that more conventional world, I would liken him to Thor myself. Joe Weber inherited the hammer and powers of the former Black Hammer when he died, being transported to the realm of New World as soon as he himself had picked up the fallen hammer. There he learned that he was meant to become the new Black Hammer, replacing the fallen one as Starlock's new and most powerful warrior in the fight against Starlock's evil twin, the Anti-God. While being the title character, Black Hammer isn't actually the main character of this series. As we learn near the end of issue number 1, Black Hammer sacrificed himself to save the world from the Anti-God and keep his fellow superheroes and friends alive. But what really happened to him, and just how and why are his teammates now seemingly trapped in the timeless and kinda eerie town of Rockwood? Well, to find out, you'll have to read on, true believers. But honestly, you should just go read Black Hammer because it's pretty great. Everyone go read all the Black Hammer things. It's like a whole universe now. Number 10. Draculina. To be clear, when we talk about heroes you've never heard of, we're more talking about those that sit on the outskirts of the superhero fandoms, so you won't find them likely on the big screen or on DC's or Marvel's main teams like the Justice League, Avengers, or the X-Men. Instead, these are heroes who come from a more humble background by comparison. Some of them may have been simply forgotten due to just how long they've been around, whereas others typically are associated with smaller or even in some cases now defunct publishers. Coming from the world of fellow indie hero Vampirella, Draculina is sort of Ella's adopted sister and also kind of her ex-lover or ex-one-night stand. There have actually been at least 2 different Draculinas, possibly 3 at this point. One is Lilith's biological daughter and the biological twin sister of Vampy, who is blonde. The other one, the one I'm focusing on, who was once Vampy's lover, became obsessed with her and was eventually adopted by Lilith to become the new Draculina. If you want to learn more about her and other Vampy adjacent characters, Sacred 6 is a pretty cool comic that I would recommend that you check out. Or you can learn more about this version of Draculina in the 2019 Vampirella series from Dynamite. Both of those series, by the way, are by Christopher Priest. Both Draculinas go by the name Victory, although the one we're talking about here was originally named Victoria, but the two do differ in terms of appearance and, like I said, blood relation. Blood relation in this context almost becomes a vampire pun. This new Draculina isn't exactly a vampire, by the way, but is armed with a demonic ring that basically grants her powers similar to one, allowing her to accurately play the part. Draculina is currently a property of Dynamite Comics. Number 9. Tony Chu. Tony Chu is a quirky and unique character, but still is ultimately a hero, and even technically has superpowers, so he would qualify as a superhero. Tony is a detective who possesses the unique power of sebopathy. Whatever he eats, except for beets, he gains in-depth knowledge of, being able to tell where all the ingredients that make it up came from, being able to taste everything about that ingested food. Tony uses this skill to basically solve murders mainly, sometimes even ingesting parts of the victims or the suspects to learn more about the case and help solve it. He initially worked for the Philadelphia Police Department, but ultimately gets fired after they witness him eating part of a deceased suspect. He later is hired by the FDA. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list, there are actually a lot more indie superheroes that I would love to tell you about as we dive into the world of unknown supers. So if you want to learn more, be sure to let us know by commenting below and giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Red Sonja. One of my favorite lesser known heroes is Red Sonja. Red Sonja comes to us from the less sci-fi, more fantasy-based world of sword and sorcery. She is an extremely gifted fighter, marksman, and sword bearer. Red Sonja, the she-devil, is said to have been given her name for, well, many different reasons. One such story as to how she got her name is that she left to seek out adventure and her fortune and became a mercenary, earning the name Red because of all the blood that she spilled. Red Sonja, while not a traditional hero, pretty much always stands up to those who are cruel and corrupt, often fighting for those who are oppressed, even against her better judgment. She has even fought death before in combat and won, allowing her to live on when she was on the brink of death. Red Sonja was once a character from the Marvel Comics wheelhouse, but currently calls Dynamite Comics her home. Number 7. Vampirella, but you can call her Vampy. Vampirella isn't a conventional hero by any means, but she definitely tries to do what's best by folks while still being a vampire from outer space, and at the same time with ties to Lilith and Hell. Overall, she's both complicated and also kinda super simple, and it's that weird blend of those two very different elements that I love about her. Vampy, being an intergalactic vampire, is super strong, fast, can fly because she actually has wings, and also has been shown to have access to advanced technology at times due to her ties to the planet Dracula. Vampirella is currently attached to Dynamite Comics, but was originally a property of Warren Publishing. Number 6. Savage Dragon. Savage Dragon is a popular hero as far as the lesser known or indie heroes go, so if you haven't heard of him before, you might want to check him out. Initially, his origins were a mystery. All we knew was that he was a humanoid, green-skinned, dragon-like character who decided to fight as a police officer and hero, fighting against the criminal and mutant super freaks of Chicago. That's also in part because Savage Dragon initially had really bad amnesia in the comics, so he didn't actually even remember his own origin story at the time. Savage Dragon hails from Image Comics and was originally introduced as simply Dragon before being known under the mantle of Savage Dragon. His powers include super strength and super healing. Number 5. Witchblade. Witchblade is a hero who comes from Top Cow Productions. Mainly we've known Witchblade as Sarah Pizzini, but the Witchblade has belonged to many other powerful women throughout the years. The Witchblade is an ancient mystical artifact that typically binds itself to a host who can then wield and use its powers at will. It can be more or less powerful depending on the host, but in this case, since Sarah is one of the most well-known hosts of the Witchblade, we're gonna basically base the ranking on her abilities. The Witchblade can be used to summon mystical armor, which can cover the entirety of its host's body, though typically most are not skilled enough to actually summon that much armor, and instead are usually only covered in little pieces of armor as a result. Hence why you see that Witchblade art and she's like, not really covered in much. This armor grants the wearer invulnerability, but even if its host is harmed, it also grants the power to heal. Aside from creating armor, the Witchblade can also be used to create weapons on the fly. It also increases its host's strength and endurance. Sarah herself was also a trained NYPD detective prior to becoming the host for the Witchblade, so she also brings her skills as an officer and detective to the table. Number 4. Luther Strode. Luther Strode is the main character in the Strange Talent of Luther Strode series, a series that hails from Image Comics. Luther ends up acquiring powers that enhance his strength, durability, speed, and combat skills after receiving a mail-order exercise program known as the Hercules Method. Luther's powers, however, only create more harm than good in his life and lead to a lot of death, much of it happening as a result of his own involvement. Try as he might to try and do good with it. While not a conventional hero, Luther definitely fits the bill of an anti-hero, or more accurately tragic hero archetype, with everything going awry no matter his intent. He's also someone I would personally love to see take on the hero who made our number 2 spot. Number 3. Radiant Black. Radiant Black is Nathan Burnett, or was Nathan Burnett. Nathan to start, anyways. Going to try not to spoil this series because it's one that I think we should all be reading, so I'm just gonna leave it at Nathan for now. Radiant Black is the first hero we meet in this series. In issue number 1, Nathan ends up getting the powers of the Black Radiant, which basically means he has the powers of a black hole. Radiant Black can manipulate gravity and also becomes super dense with this power set. The downside for this hero is being new means that he's pretty inexperienced in the comics thus far. However, gravity manipulation as a power set is insane, which is how he ranks so high up on this list despite his inexperience. Radiant Black hails from Image Comics, and like I said, if you have not checked out this series and gotten to know the Radiants yet, well, you definitely need to change that, and you need to do so. It's like Power Rangers, but possibly cooler, and I say that having much respect and much love for Power Rangers. So that's not a snub at all, it's just like, it's really good. Number 2. Bulletproof. You know Invincible, but do you know Bulletproof? Fans of the comic series likely do, but if you just became an Invincible fan via the animated series, then this isn't a character that you'd be familiar with just yet. After all, at this point we've only had 1 season so far, so it's very likely Bulletproof will appear in the series, just not until a bit later on. Bulletproof is Zandel Rudolph. He got his powers as a result of his brother using him as basically a science experiment, as his brother Tyrone was actually obsessed with superpowers. Zandel would end up getting powers as a result of this mad science, while his brother would end up dead. Bulletproof also goes on to take up the Invincible mantle at one point, filling in for Mark when he is off-world. Zandel's powers are based on energy absorption, which I think is one of the strongest power sets to have personally. Bulletproof, like other heroes in the Invincible universe comes to us from Skybound, which is an imprint of Image Comics. Number 1. The Darkness. The Darkness is an ancient elemental force that takes up residence in a host, granting them special powers. One of the most famous hosts that we have come to know as the Darkness is Jackie Estacado. The powers that Jackie wields are similar to what you'd expect from some kind of demonic force. They're also honestly comparable to Venom's power set from Marvel Comics. At least I see a lot of similarities there. The Darkness gives you access to a sort of mystical armor which can be summoned at will. It also grants the user a healing factor, shapeshift abilities, and through them also the ability to fly via wings that you can create. Jackie as the Darkness can also create dark tendrils, which he can also turn into weapons, and he can also summon entities known as Darklings. While more of an anti-hero due to his methods, Jackie Estacado is still a hero in the sense that he generally fights on the side of good. The Darkness hails from Top Cow Productions. And if you do know the Witchblade, you probably know the Darkness, or vice versa.
Coming in at number 10, Prowler. Hobby Brown. Now, when I mention the Prowler, of course the first thing that comes to your mind is Aaron Davis, the uncle of Miles Morales, who played one of the villains in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. If you haven't seen it, it literally won an Oscar. It's amazing. Go watch it right now after this video. That is one of the best movies, period, not just animated movies, but best movies ever. Yeah, that's it. But I'm talking about Hobby Brown's Prowler. A little bit different. He made his comic book debut back in Amazing Spider-Man 78 in 1969. I like the OG Prowler more. He was a villain and then kind of like a hero, and he has an honest character arc, you know? Like, he was this guy who cleaned windows for a living. In the middle of a shift, this guy gets caught in the middle of a fight with Daredevil and Stiltman. So after that incident, he was inspired to make his own suit and secret identity to go along with it. So he made himself wrist and ankle bracelets to hold cleaning fluid and gave himself boots and claws to help climb. Not a bad idea at all. Kind of feels like you just want to be a villain. I don't know. That's a really weird way of doing it. Get a camelback, put it in there, then spray the stuff. I don't know, just an idea. So after he lost his job, however, it became clear what his next step had to be. Now I say had to because this was an honest guy who didn't want to hurt anybody. He didn't want to be a villain. He just needed to get by. Spider-Man gave him warnings too, like he didn't really crack down on him too hard. He knew that Hobby Brown wasn't a bad guy, and that's what I love about him. We have Aaron Davis in the MCU, played by Childish Gambino, and he's an arms dealer, so I'm hoping, as you guys are probably as well, that he makes a similar character arc becoming the Prowler, whilst also introducing Miles Morales in that MCU. And I feel like we're honestly days away from finding out who's playing Miles in the MCU, because they're filming, I think right now, the new Spider-Man. So comment down below who you think is going to be casted, and then once it's out, we can come back and check the comments and see who's right and who's wrong. And we'll shout out only the wrong people. We'll shame you. Shame. He also looks a lot like Spawn. I don't know, just saying. Number 9, the Orb. This guy is quite fun, and believe it or not, he's been clearly referenced in the MCU. You just gotta keep an eye out for it. Puns, here we go. There's so many puns in this thing, by the way, it's gonna get nuts. These puns are wild. Yeah, he's got an eyeball for a head, and no, I'm not joking. Making his first appearance in Ghost Rider Volume 6, Issue 26, the Orb is, well, yeah, look at him. He was born with a head that was a giant eye, and if that's not already the coolest thing ever, I don't really know what is. His parents abandoned him at a young age because, well, of course they did. I mean, it would be quite the scene during childbirth. Oh, it's crowning. Yep, I think I see the head. Nope, it sees me. That's definitely a big eyeball. We gotta go. So naturally, he was made fun of. He couldn't speak either. I mean, he just made squishy noises. His massive eyeball head had powers. I mean, I hope, or else this guy's life is just a horror film. He can blast people with this red energy beam that shoots out of his eye thing. And he can even tell when somebody's thinking about him, which would probably be a lot of the time, considering that's what he looks like. So yeah, he was for sure referenced in Ant-Man and the Wasp. Right at the start of the movie when Scott is playing with Cassie, she has to use this retinal scanner thing. It's like in the cardboard fort. And she puts on this paper plate mask that looks like a big eye. And if that's not a reference to the Orb, it's a reference to Mike Wachowski. So one or the other, I got it. Number 8, Jack-O-Lantern. 'Tis the season, so it's only fair to include Jack-O-Lantern. Making his debut in Captain America issue 396, he's a sick villain. Jason Macendale, who started off as a mercenary but was deemed too violent, so naturally after his departure he donned a new look and gave himself a fancy new evil nickname to go along with it, Jack-O-Lantern. I love his look, it's very Headless Horseman type, I like it. He was referred to as Mad Jack in Spectacular Spider-Man in the 90s, and he actually was Mysterio, This whole time? No, just in that iteration. So from 1996 and onward, starting with Spectacular Spider-Man 241, that's when Norman Osborn comes up to Daniel Beckert and pitches his new alter ego, Mad Jack. He shows him the new pumpkin head, very nice touch, elegant, nice and terrifying too. The fancy glider, the pumpkin bombs, the blasters. I can see a live action jack-o'-lantern happening, for real. I mean, we're pretty much there with all the gliders and the gear. Once you throw on a jack-o'-lantern into the picture, that's it, it's pretty much done. We have Hobgoblin, we have all those gliders. I think it's time for jack-o'-lantern. Hashtag Mad Jack. Number 7, Jim Jaspers. He made his debut in Daredevil's number 7 in 1983. This dude's pretty wild. He started off as a British politician who served as the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, and then he was a leader of the Conservative Party, okay? So he was known for his anti-superhero stance. I mean, of course, your name is Jim Jaspers. You already sound like an annoying character, brother. Jim Jaspers. Jim Jaspers over here, sir. He didn't like soups because he wanted to keep Britain safe. Fair? I mean, you got a point. So of course, many people agreed with him and he won the general election. Bam, done. But Jim Jaspers had some little Jim Jaspers tricks up his sleeves. He actually was a mutant with reality warping powers. Oh, these type of guys scare me. Like one bad day and then it's over. Like, they're crazy. I don't like those guys. So he's representing Haslop West and even gets knighted by Queen Elizabeth. So he creates this strike team whose job it is to gather up all these superheroes. And the slogan and all the posters says, "In your hearts, you know he's right. In our hearts, way to go after our souls." The best part of the capabilities of Jim Jaspers takes place in the Marvel UK storyline, Crooked World. So if you want to see the reality warping Jim Jaspers is capable of in full force, you gotta check that out yourselves. Also, I've said it before and I'll say it again, Jim Jaspers will be introduced in WandaVision and will be a secret villain working quietly. I'm calling it now. Check the date, that's it. Number 6, Hyperion. The Superman of the Marvel Universe, basically. I mean, making his first appearance in Avengers issue 69 back in 1969. Nice. That's right, so when the Grandmaster traveled to Earth 712, he challenged Scarlet Supreme to a contest. So each fighter gets to kind of pick their own team. So the Grandmaster won using the Squadron Supreme. So he changed 3 people over to become Nighthawk, Dr. Spectrum, and the Wizard. Now of course, he still needed that Hyperion spot, so he created him out of extra dimensional matter. Spirit fingers. Even throwing in the artificial memories to go along with it. He was made to think he was Zibron, this space explorer from Yttrium, a planet from one of the microverses. Named after the Titan of Greek mythology, Hyperion actually went toe-to-toe with Thor. But, you know, with Thor being Thor and all, Hyperion ended up losing. The hammer was too much to handle. Another pun. Kind of. That was, we're pushing. Hyperion was shrunk, depowered, and imprisoned by Thor into this tiny glass globe. Don't worry though, Nebulon got him out. He's good. Number 5, Lyra. We go now to Earth 8009, beginning with Hulk Raging Thunder issue 1. We find Lyra Walters, or more commonly referred to as Savage She-Hulk. So she's from Earth 8009 in the 23rd century, and then at that time the Earth was split into 2 different factions. The guys' factions were like warriors, you know, they just looked up to heroes like Wolverine, just manly men, I guess, being men. And the women came together under the United Sisterhood Republic, and they were outgunned and outmanned. Literally. So Thundra got sent to Earth 616 where she met that Earth's Hulk and then had a baby. And then Lyra actually gets stronger when she's calm, which is of course not common when it comes to our green giants. That'd be amazing to see though. It just cuts to like Lyra reading a book and everyone's like, man, she's wild right now. Look at how strong she is. She's like, just jacked while she's reading 50 Shades of Grey. 50 Shades of Green! This is great, this is awesome. She's also able to tap into gamma sight, which means she basically can see the flow of gamma radiation. She's one with the gamma. Like all over the world too, not like within her personal range. She taps into all of it. So she becomes more skilled in this state because she sees everything and knows the next move. If she becomes angry, however, she will actually become weaker. So it's a fun little game of opposites. But at her weakest, she's still as strong as Spider-Man, so doesn't quite say a lot when you say the word weakness. Number 4, Songbird. Also known as Melissa Gold, Songbird made her comic debut in 1997 in The Incredible Hulk issue 449. She ran away from her parents at a young age, of course, and whilst developing a hard knock life attitude, she ended up becoming a professional wrestler, just like the Spider-Gwen version of She-Hulk, funny enough. That would be a fun crossover. I don't know. She gave herself the stage name Screaming Mimi and joined the wrestling crew, the Grapplers. Now, in Marvel's television run, they could for sure bring this character in. It can happen. And it would be a blast. So the Grapplers were straight killing it, but they weren't making the same amount of money as the male wrestlers. That rings a familiar bell, huh? Doesn't it? So they took on a new job with the Roxxon Oil Company. Now, of course, the mission failed because Quasar came in and had to save the day. Melissa was given vocal cord implants that provided her with acoustic kinetics. Hence the name Screaming Mimi. You figured it out. She can make all these crazy weapons with just her voice, and even has the ability to craft herself wings and fly. Whenever I scream, my voice just cracks. Like, a lot. Number 3, Swarm. Okay, this next guy is an absolute unit. Fritz von Meyer made his debut in Champions issue 14 back in 1977. And as you can probably guess by his name, he's made of 1,000 bees. And as you can probably guess by his actual name, he's also a Nazi scientist. He used looted gold to pay for all of his projects. He's this Nazi beekeeper. I mean, what a character. One day he found a beehive that was quite different, to say the least. So Fritz made a device that would help reawaken these mysterious bees, which he thought were the end result of a mutation with a nearby fallen meteorite. So these bees ended up attacking and killing Fritz, not the Nazi beekeeper Fritz. As you would think, his consciousness was spread out through all of these bees, and now you have this monstrosity bee guy. Just a man made of bees. I don't care what criminal you are, if you see a guy made out of bees, I'm tapping out, that's it. Like, there's no fight. If I was robbing a bank and I heard like behind me, there's no chance any amount of money is worth that pain. Puns are killing it. Number 2, Leapfrog. Yep, you heard me. Okay, picture this. What if when Cap said Avengers Assemble and Avengers Endgame, and it just panned through all those characters, there was just like a frog just chilling there, like a frog guy, just standing like, yeah, let's mess him up. All wet and frog-like. Vincent Patilio, of course, was an inventor. I mean, who else gets to this point in their life? Must be a wacky inventor. Making his first comic book debut in Daredevil issue 25 in 1967, he was a loser. In his own words, he said this, not me. He invented things, but nothing was sticking. Again with the puns, oh my god, this guy's wild. So until one day, he created these powerful leaping coils. And after that, he decided to, well, do crimes, because of course. And in one of his first villainous outings, he went to an airport and started leaping around and prevented planes from taking off. That's the worst villain move right there. Delaying my trip to Fiji? No sir, leapy man. This guy would be a great villain for a TV show. I feel like Falcon and the Winter Soldier could bring him in for like one episode. They have Batroc the Leaper coming back, so let's just do like a team of leapers. The entire episode is just Sebastian Stan looking around like. And lastly, coming in at number 1, Gamecock. Yep, I said that. Carlos Cabrera made his comic book debut in Captain America issue 183. He was a small villain who crossed paths with Steve Rogers a couple of times. And as far as powers go, he has none. But he dresses like this, so one would only assume he's the coolest, strongest, baddest dude in the game. He is, however, a great fighter. And I see how the inspiration came about. Cockfighting, the sharp claws, he's a great fighter. He also sports the claws on his feet and his hands. And if you think this guy wasn't already insane enough, he has a crew that he rolls with who also dresses up like chickens. I feel like they could use this character in an Easter egg easily. I mean, just having any sporting event with a chicken mascot and his name could be Carlos. Boom, then all of us would be like, that's the chicken thug, I know that guy. Maybe he could even call his gang the Chicken Nuggets. And whenever he wants to leave, he like snaps his fingers and he goes, let's dip. And the other chicken dudes are like, yeah, let's go rob somebody. I could use an extra buck. Yeah, that's like 7 puns. I'll leave now, that's fair, that's fair. Number 10, Bob. Hands down the best name for a superhero sidekick, period. We have Bob. Making his first appearance in Cable and Deadpool issue 38, Bob is a former member of the terrorist agency known as Hydra. Hail Hydra. But most importantly, hail Bob. So how did Bob get into Hydra in the first place? What are you doing, Bob? Well, his wife Allison was giving him a hard time for not being able to get a steady job. So so he figured he would work for Hydra. Classic. He wasn't a big fan of the organization though, only because they didn't have dental coverage. I mean, fair. Not a bad point, Bob. Valid point. Funny enough, Bob made a brief cameo in the 2016 Deadpool movie, where in the final battle of the film, he caught up with him, talking about Bob's wife Gail and her amazing tuna casserole, right before a quick headbutt knockout. But don't worry, Wade dragged Bob off screen to safety, or so we assume.
Number 9, Elsa Bloodstone. I can already hear the fans of Elsa Bloodstone raging in an uproar of that they know Elsa and how dare I put her on this list. And while yes, Elsa Bloodstone does have some very passionate fans, I will add that there are actually a lot of Marvel fans out there who are unfamiliar with her. Trust me, I know some pretty intense fellow comic nerds who have never heard of her until running into her in Marvel Strike Force. I'm looking at you, Dylan. So I thought it might be nice to talk a little bit more about this character who is super awesome, but tends to be less celebrated and not as well known to most. Elsa was born into a legacy of monster hunters. Her father Ulysses was a monster hunter before her, and so it was her destiny to defeat monsters while working alongside the good ones. Let's not forget that the Marvelverse also has a whole other horror and monster aspect to it as well. After all, Blade is also a part of Marvel. Have we ever gotten a Blade and Elsa team up, by the way? That is something I'd love to see. Should have already happened at this point.
Number 8, Jasper Sitwell. He made his comic book debut in 1966 in Strange Tales issue 144, and his cinematic debut in Thor 1. We all remember that agent Natasha Romanoff kicked off the building in Captain America Winter Soldier. That was the big reveal moment for the Falcon. But who was the agent that they were threatening? Well, Jasper Sitwell posed as a high-ranking S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. In reality, he was actually working for Hydra. This dude wasn't close too, like him and Coulson were the ones that got the call about Thor's hammer first landing on Earth. And he was one of the secret masterminds behind Project Insight. Could have been worse though. In the comics, Sitwell is actually Nick Fury's assistant, and at one point temporarily becomes the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. Sitwell is played by Maximiliano Hernandez in the MCU, so if you want to see him on the big screen, you've got a little bit of catching up to do.
Number 7, Lindsay Mccabe. Lindsay is the best friend of Jessica Drew. You maybe never knew that she had? Me personally, I thought Jessica's best friend might be Carol Danvers, and maybe now that might be more true, but throughout the later 70s to the mid 90s in the comics, Lindsay Mccabe was it. She and Jessica met while living in New York at a group therapy clinic. Jessica liked Lindsay because she was a tough, strong woman who wasn't afraid of Jessica or intimidated by Jessica's strange powers. Eventually, the two moved to San Francisco together when Lindsay got the opportunity to study theater there. Lindsay herself was an actress. Lindsay would eventually learn Jessica was Spider-Woman and would also spend some time working with Jess when she had her private investigation agency. She would also try to help Wolverine in the disguise of Patch, whom she also knew previously, though did not actually recognize. She didn't know it was Wolverine, thought it was Patch, to save her friend Jessica when she was possessed by the Black Blade, aka the Muramasa Blade.
Number 6, Space Knights. Okay, these guys are awesome, and I hope we get a Space Knights show soon, or in my lifetime at least. They're fairly new to the game, having first appeared in Guardians of Infinity issue 2, only back in 2016. So a long time ago in the Outer Rim, a substance known as core was discovered. This substance gave a little bit of flair to the Perrin's warriors' weapons. So led by Horn, the warriors saved the planet from slavery. One thing to note about core that's rather important is that if it's sitting too long, it would corrupt the soldiers. So they always have to get a move on. Kind of like if I'm near chocolate milk at any point in my life. It's just eventually gonna corrupt me, and then I'm gonna have to chug all of it because I have no self-control as a human being. Get it away from me. Go, gone. So as time went on, more and more joined in on the warriors' efforts, and the group came to be known as, you guessed it, the Space Knights.
Number 5, Peepers. Peepers is one of those much lesser known mutants who has been around for quite a long time, but due to his unimpressive power set, pops up a lot less in comparison to others. Similar to Eye-Boy, Peepers' powers all kind of have to do pretty much with his sight or his eyes. A physical mutation made his eyes larger than most, so much so that they kind of protrude outward to an extent. He has enhanced eyesight, X-ray vision, and was sometimes even known to be able to fire optic blasts out of his eyes, similar to Cyclops, but not really on the same level as the X-Men team leader. Peepers' legal name is Peter Quinn, and while I haven't seen him pop up yet in the Dawn of X line, and hey, I've been watching for that, he has made a recent appearance in Marvel's Ravencroft series, where he appears to be working as an orderly or a medical assistant at Ravencroft. pretty random.
Number 4, Ella Whitby. Making her comic book debut back in Deadpool Volume 2, Issue 40, Ella Whitby was the doctor who helped Deadpool escape Crossmore Institution in England. But it wasn't long before she confessed her love for the Merc of the Mouth. Wade, however, didn't share the same feelings. Ella started to become a bit of a stalker, I guess you could say. She confessed her love to him again, only this time not so fashionable, with a homemade Deadpool suit attached to her body. So Deadpool starts to get curious and goes to her house. Turns out she's collected body parts of Deadpool. So Deadpool realizes that she's probably going for the Warden next to make Deadpool happy and all. So he goes to Warden's house, and just as he had expected, she was waiting there to kill the Warden in just the way Deadpool would do it himself. That is, by boiling tea made with ammonium nitrate on the stove with a plastic bag in the oven filling with gas. So after the explosion, Wade went back to her apartment, met up with a very burned Ella, and told her that he loves somebody else. Hashtag Wade the Heartbreaker.
Number 3, Amazing Baby. You might not know Amazing Baby just yet because, well, they're a super new character. But they also exist as a throwback to an older X-Men enemy, the Warwolves. Warwolves were an enemy of the X-Men that were almost shapeshifters. Almost. Their ability allowed them to drain their enemies of their life energy and then basically wear their skins like a suit, disguising themselves as that person. These Warwolves originally hailed from Mojo World and were sentient wolf-like metallic-looking creatures. Amazing Baby is a Warwolf pup that the Excalibur team in the Dawn of X line rescued from Cullen Bloodstone. Yes, relation to Elsa, who we talked about earlier. Cullen's her brother. The rescue pup was then given to Rachel Summers, who agreed to look after the little one despite how dangerous the mutants know this pup could grow up to be. She named her pet werewolf Amazing Baby, and you can also see him pop up in the Dawn of X's X Factor series alongside Rachel.
And number 2, Macho Gomez. Making his debut in Deadpool Volume 2, Issue 32, Macho Gomez is said to be the baddest, most feared operator in the galaxy, and his name sure does sound like it. He's a skilled fighter when it comes to shooting. He's got 6 fingers on each hand instead of 5, so he has that extra accuracy, you know? He's got that one little flip-flop over for stability. He's kind of like a Mandalorian bounty hunter in a way. He has the cockiness and the attitude to follow suit as well. When he was hired to assassinate the family of Reginald Harris, he was actually tricked into thinking Deadpool had already done the job before him. So naturally, he was kind of pissed and wanted to get back at him. Now, fighting Deadpool is usually a pretty tough task. So Macho Gomez lost the battle more than once. And after losing a battle to Deadpool, Macho was pushed into an escape pod and sent into the depths of space. Meanwhile, Wade took his place and replaced him at Funzel, even marrying Orxa. That's Deadpool for you. I don't know.
Number 1, Kandra. I love how when Kandra first appeared in the comics, she already came with a ton of backstory and power. The funny part was that although she threw her weight around as this supervillain of sorts in Gambit issue number 1, and was this immortal who had ties to tons of other characters, this was our first time meeting her. What an introduction. During her initial appearance, Kandra was revealed to be the Benefactress, a character who had pitted the Thieves Guild and Assassins Guild of New Orleans against one another for centuries for her own purposes. She is also heavily implied to be a former lover of Gambit's, and we'd come to know her as a member of the often now forgotten Externals, an immortal, often villainous group of mutants who are insanely powerful, and not to be confused with the Eternals, which is a totally different group. And Externals as well cannot die. Well, for the most part. Remember Selene? She was also a part of the Externals, but Selene simply became much more popular, so we still know who she is.